The 2024 version of the Texas football roster just dropped. Yes, we now have all the heights and weights of our favorite football players going into spring football. And I tell you what on the roster stood out to me.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. On today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, my reactions to the 2024 version of the Texas Longhorns football roster heading into spring practices and the orange and white game in April. In the second segment, we're talking about the Texas baseball team who got a huge road series win against a ranked team in Texas Tech, starting conference play, coming off a 4-game losing streak in Houston and then against Texas A&M in the dish this past Tuesday. We discussed that. And in the third segment, the Texas basketball team got their 7th straight victory over the Oklahoma Sooners and ended the regular season in style in the Moody Center. We discuss all of that and more on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So every year around this time, it gets really exciting. You're kind of in that phase where you've officially accepted that it's the off season and you're somewhat done reminiscing about everything that just happened during the college football season, and you're ready to move into the next year, right? Or in this case, 2024, right? We're ready to move on and see the 2024 version of the Texas Longhorns. And every year around this time, we get the roster, which means that spring football is coming up. And because we're just diehard college football fans, we get excited about learning the heights and weights of our favorite football players. But, on a serious note, it's cool to see the players that weren't on the roster last year, right, in terms of the transfers and the true freshmen that come in through the high school class, to see what they're officially listed at in terms of height and weight going into the spring practices, going into spring football. And then it's cool to see the players that were on the roster the previous year, to see the changes they've made to their body, right? If they've gone up in weight or if they've gone down in weight, and how that may affect them in the upcoming season. So every year around this time, like I said, it's cool to get the roster, and we love football so much that we make a thing about seeing our favorite players' heights and weights. But the biggest thing and the best thing is that it indicates that spring football is on the way, and hopefully the real season and the real football comes sooner than later. So I went through the entire roster. I wrote down what stood out to me, and here it goes, right? We're starting with the quarterback position, most important position on the field. Our leader, Quinn Ewers, listed at 6'2", 205 pounds. Last year, he was listed at 6'2", 195 pounds. So he's gained 10 pounds, hopefully of muscle. Right? I believe it's a muscle. He said he got rid of Chick-fil-A a few years ago to, get in better shape and take better care of his body. But seriously, when you look at Quinn Ewers, I think 195 pounds is pretty slight, right? And 205 pounds is probably still a little slight, but it's a huge upgrade from where he was, last season. And when you look at it, his redshirt freshman year, he got hurt against Alabama. Last year in his redshirt sophomore year, he got hurt against U of H. And so you want to try to put on more muscle onto that frame to be able to play a full season, right? That may be a question mark that NFL teams have. Like, can you play a full season? And putting on more weight should be able to help him absorb those hits and, play the full 13, 14, 15 games, whatever Texas ends up playing this year. Also, it'll benefit him long term, right? Obviously, Quinn Ewers will be playing in the National Football League one day, and I would assume that they probably want him to get up to 215, 220, right? Because I think even 205 pounds, especially at the National Football League level, is small, especially given his injury history. So it's good to see Quinn Ewers up 10 pounds this year. Hopefully that means he can play every game this season and kind of show, NFL evaluators that he can stay healthy. And then I think that'll benefit him long term as he continues to add more weight to his frame in terms of his durability in the National Football League. Anthony Hill listed at 6'3", 243 pounds, up about 10 pounds from last year. I think that'll really benefit him, one, moving to the SEC, two, taking on more of a full-time role on this Texas football team now that Jalen Ford has moved on, right? And, Anthony Hill has a year under his belt in the program, should be one of the top candidates for SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I've said he's going to win one. I'm not sure if it's this year or next year in his last year at the 40 acres, but good to see him at 243 pounds. I would expect special things from Anthony Hill, and he absolutely will be one of the best defensive players in the country this season. Ryan Wingo listed at 6'2", 208 pounds, fresh out of high school as a true freshman. Adonai Mitchell just measured in at 6'2", 205 pounds at the NFL Draft Combine. So Ryan Wingo is already bigger than Adonai Mitchell just weighed in last week at the NFL Draft Combine. And also in just 3, short months on campus, or 2 short months on campus, Wingo has also generated speeds of 22 plus miles per hour so far. So you're talking about 6'2", 208 pounds confirmed. That's running speeds of 22 plus miles per hour. He could be an athletic freak at the 40 acres. He could be the next great wide receiver. He has the pedigree to be the next great wide receiver at the 40 acres. Super excited to see what Ryan Wingo brings to this University of Texas football team. Kobe Black, another true freshman, 6'2", 204 pounds, which is big, really big for a corner, especially, when he's, 2 months on campus. That's crazy. Ryan Watts measured in at 6'3", 208 at the combine. So Kobe Black has similar, similar measurables as a true freshman. It'll be interesting to see long-term if Kobe's best fit is at corner or safety, right? I know he's playing corner right now, and he did a really good job at that, height and weight in high school, but 6'2", 204 is big. He may be able to play safety at a higher level. We'll see. Not putting him at safety right now, but once again, 6'2", 204 pounds is big for a corner. You got a lot of these smaller, shifty, wide receivers right now that can make plays. So 6'2", 204 pounds is big. Would love to see him play at corner, but I think whether it's at corner or safety, he's going to be a really good player. But like I said, 6'2", 204 pounds, that's a huge measurement, especially for a corner coming straight out of high school. I don't know what they were feeding him in Waco. Isaiah Bond is listed at 180 pounds, 5'11", 180 pounds. Xavier Worthy played at 165. I don't think he was ever bigger than 165 at any point in his Texas tenure. So as good as Xavier Worthy was, right, I think Isaiah Bond's physical nature will allow him to reach higher heights in this offense. I've said it a few times on the podcast that, Xavier Worthy's season highs at Texas were 75 catches, 1,014 yards. I think Isaiah Bond breaks both of those metrics this year, right? Under year 3, Quinn Ewers and Steve Sarkisian. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is he's bigger than Xavier Worthy and should be able to play more physical than Xavier Worthy was able to at Texas, especially down the field. Colin Simmons at the edge position, true freshman, being 234 pounds at this stage is huge. He was playing around 215 to 220 in high school, and that won't work on a collegiate defensive line, right? So if he can continue to fill out his frame while maintaining explosiveness, he can be an impact player from day one. Trey Moore is listed at 242 pounds, and he has 22 and a half sacks over his last 2 years, right? So I think Colin Simmons coming out of high school was a little too small to have a huge impact his freshman year, but getting up to 234 pounds, I wouldn't be surprised if he's closer to 240 by the time the season starts. I think he can make a day one impact in the SEC, especially at that weight. Going back to the quarterback position, and this is why I talk about, Quinn Ewers being a little bit of slight of frame. Arch Manning is listed at 6'4", 220, and Quinn Ewers just got up to 205 pounds. But Trey Owens, another true freshman, right? I don't know if it's the strength and conditioning or what. He's listed at 6'5", 236 pounds as a true freshman quarterback. That is a big dude, right? I'm excited to see what he can potentially do at the 40 acres. I know we have a great run of quarterbacks coming in, but I think Trey Owens is a part of that great run of quarterbacks, and he can make some special things happen in the burnt orange and white. Savion Red, our Wildcat running back at this point, started off as a wide receiver, then went to running back. Now he's our Wildcat quarterback, whatever you want to call him. He's huge, right? Listed at 240 pounds at running back. That Wildcat package just got a little bit harder to stop. So, goal line situations, 4th and 1 situations to get 1 yard, 2 yard. I expect to see Savion Red a lot this year, and I expect to see him convert in those situations a lot this year at 240 pounds. Leonga Lafau, 6'1", 218. That seems pretty slight for a linebacker. I was expecting him to take a big jump in terms of opportunity and playing time this season. He very well, may take that big jump in terms of opportunity and playing time. But 6'1", 218 just seems pretty small for a linebacker. But hey, hard over height and I guess hard over weight. Darian Gillette, 6'3", 232 pounds. Love his versatility at that size. Somebody who brings pass rushing potential to that linebacker position. Somebody who can play a traditional linebacker, off linebacker, at the edge position on the defensive line. Once again, a lot of versatility, athleticism at that spot. And I think 6'3", 232 pounds is just the perfect frame for that type of player that brings that versatility to Pete Kwiatkowski's defense. DJ Campbell listed at 332 pounds compared to 343 last year. He's already a freak athlete at that position. I think he showed that in spurts last season. I think him now being at 332 is probably a more comfortable weight for him. And I think you'll see that freakish athleticism and just that freakish play at the right guard position more consistently. Now that he's dropped 10 pounds, seems to be in better shape going into the season. Cam Williams at 6'5", 360. Peyton Kirkland at 6'6", 366. And Connor Stroh at 6'7", 372 pounds is just insanity, right? And we need to somehow find a package where all three of them are on the offensive line at the same time and we just run directly behind them, because that has to be a touchdown every time. 6'5", 360, and there's two players bigger than you on the offensive line and taller than you on the offensive line is crazy. But, we said we wanted big humans, and big humans we have brought into the 40 acres. Brandon Baker, true freshman tackle, coming in at 6'4", 297 pounds. I love that frame for him. Obviously, he'll get a little bit bigger. I think Kelvin Banks came in around that weight, probably a little bit bigger, and then now he's at 324. So I think, eventually Brandon Baker will play around 315, 320, but that tells me that he's a technician at that tackle position, and he didn't just rely on bullying people or being way bigger than his competition in high school. That's why he's a 5-star tackle coming in as a technician at 6'4", 297 pounds. Excited to see what he'll be able to do in the SEC once he gets up to 310, 315, or 320, whether it's at left tackle or right tackle in the future at Texas. Spencer Shannon, listed at 6'7", 251 pounds, could be very interesting at that tight end position, down the road. You rarely see tight ends that tall at 6'7", and he has good size at 251 pounds. He's one of the biggest tight ends on the roster, if not the biggest tight end on the roster already. So I think, he's still raw at that position, but if he can develop 6'7", 251 with some movement skills, he could be one of the best tight ends in the country. Definitely a diamond in the rough you want to keep your eyes on if Spencer Shannon can figure it out at that tight end position, because those measurables are crazy. 6'7", 251. Sadir Mitchell, 6'6", 372 pounds. We just saw T'Vondre Sweat dominate at 362 pounds last year. Hopefully Sadir Mitchell can follow that blueprint, because 372 pounds is huge, right? Ethan Burke up to 254 pounds. I remember he came into college at about 220, should bode really well for him in the SEC. He's a really good pass rusher at that weight. He should be able to hold up for the full course of a season and be able to give Texas a lot of production at that edge position at that weight. And then Alfred Collins at 6'5", 321 pounds. I'm intrigued, right? Intrigued to see him in a full-time role, intrigued to see him knowing that he's the guy now and he's not behind anybody, and intrigued to see him at 321 pounds. Is he still as physical and athletic and a freak of nature at that weight? And what could he bring to this defensive line as a starter in the SEC? So I am absolutely ready to be hurt by Alfred Collins again. But that is our 2024 Texas football roster and what stood out to me. Very excited to see this team in spring practices. Very excited to see this team on the field come the end of August. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we get into the baseball team, who picked up a much-needed series win after dropping 4 in a row over the last week before the weekend. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to hire. And LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. And remember, terms and conditions do apply. All right, talking about the Texas baseball team, and things were bad, right, as they had lost 4 games in a row. We never do incredibly well in terms of the showcases in Globe Life Field or Minute Maid Park, but this year felt a little bit different, right? Even though we started off the season 4-7 last year, we were 7-1 going into the games at Minute Maid Park, but we dropped all 3 of them against Vanderbilt, LSU, and Texas State. In 2 of those games, we scored double-digit runs. So there was a lot of heat on the pitching. David Pierce, the manager and pitching coach. And then we came back on Tuesday and dropped a game at home against Texas A&M, right? One of our biggest rivals. So David Pierce was on hot seat watch, according to everybody on Twitter. But, a lot of people were down on the baseball program. And, of course, said that, they, said that this team wouldn't go far, right? Even though this team has a lot of time to figure it out, as they did last year. So huge bounce back over the weekend, going up to Lubbock and taking 2 out of 3 games against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. So they now sit at 9-6 on the season. Texas Tech was ranked. And so, it doesn't take the full taste out of your mouth about what happened in Houston or against Texas A&M, but at least shows you that this Texas baseball team, when they're playing their best, can be really good, and hopefully is on the right track if they continue to get better over the course of the season. So when you look at Friday's game, they responded in a big way after their 4th straight loss with a 22-8 victory over the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Texas immediately jumped out to a 4-0 lead in the first inning off 3 straight singles and then a 3-run homer from Max Bellew. Texas would allow 3 runs in the second inning while self-destructing with walks, errors, a wild pitch, and a pass ball. It's like you playing MLB The Show on Legend and can't figure it out, right? Texas Tech tied it at 4. So it's now 4-4 with a solo homer in the 3rd inning. Yeah. Okay. Tech tied it at 4 with a solo homer in the 3rd inning, but then Texas would respond in the top of the 4th, so the very next half inning, with 7 runs to take an 11-4 lead. And then they came back in the next inning and scored 5 more runs. So at this point, they're up 16-4 against Texas Tech after the 5th inning. 7 of those runs in those 2 innings came on a home run from Porter Brown and a grand slam from Rylan Galvin. Texas would have 2 bases loaded walks in the 6th to go up 18-5 at that point, and then got another grand slam, their 2nd of the day, by Gasparino in the 9th to get to 22 runs. LeBaron Johnson and Ace Whitehead, the pitchers, did allow 16 base runners and 8 runs, one of those being unearned, so 7 earned runs. But they allowed David Pierce to save the bullpen, only having to use 2 pitchers that day. The defense also had 3 errors. So a good bounce back on Friday with a 22-8 victory over the Texas Tech Red Raiders. On Saturday, Texas came out and lost to Texas Tech 7-2. Max Bellew hit another homer in the series, giving Texas a 1-0 lead in the 2nd inning. And in the bottom of the 2nd, Cody Howard gave up 3 runs with 2 outs, and that was the ball game because the offense stayed at the hotel on Saturday. Porter Brown would cut the lead to 3-2 with his own solo homer, but that would be the last time Texas crossed the plate on Saturday. Texas would score 2 in the 4th and 7th to add to their total, giving you a score of 7-2. The pitchers only allowed 5 earned runs, and 2 were a result of 2 errors. So the defense was not great in the first 2 games of the series, which is why it was split 1-1. Then you come back on Sunday for the rubber match, and thankfully Texas came back to win that one 9-7 to also take the series. Texas Tech had 4 hits in the first inning, including a 2-run homer that put them up 3-0 against Texas right away, once again in the first inning. But Texas came right back and chipped away, made it 3-2 on an RBI double by Max Bellew. Definitely one of the best hitter in the world, on the planet, over the weekend against Texas Tech in the top of the 2nd. Tech would respond with a solo homer to make it 4-2 in the bottom of the 2nd. Max Bellew hit his 3rd homer of the series in the 4th to cut the lead to 4-3, but Tech snatched the momentum right back with 2 solo homers in the same inning to go up 6-3 after that Max Bellew homer. Peyton Powell chipped away once again, made it 6-4 with a solo homer in the 5th. And then Texas was able to take the lead for good 7-6 in the 6th inning after a runner reached by error, and then an RBI double, RBI single, and RBI double to follow. Texas would then hit 2 sacrifice flies to extend their lead to 9-6. Tech got a run back in the 7th to end the scoring, and Texas once again won 9-7 on Sunday and got the series win, a crucial series win against Texas Tech. Gage Bone pitched from the 6th inning into the end in this game, allowing the offense to retake the lead with his dominant pitching, only gave up 1 run on a sacrifice fly, and the defense came back with a strong performance on Sunday, committing no errors in this game. So the offense has been amazing for this Texas baseball team in the 4-game losing streak. They scored double-digit runs twice, came back and scored 22 runs on Friday, scored 9 runs on Sunday, so you can forgive the 2-run performance on Saturday. The defense has to be better. A nice bounce back on Sunday with no errors, but they did have 5 errors in the first 2 games of the series. That's not going to cut it against some of the better teams in the country. Really isn't going to cut it against anybody because we know anything can happen in baseball. And the pitching still has to take a step up, right? You gave up 8 runs, 7 runs, and then 7 runs in this series, right? And I know, some of that was attributed to the defense and allowing runners on base that should not have been on base, but still, right? This Texas baseball team is still giving up about 7 runs a game, and that's not going to be good enough to win at the highest level, right? You don't want to put that type of pressure on your offense to say, hey, we need you to score 8 to 10 runs every game to win baseball games. So offense looks really good. Defense is getting better. Nice performance yesterday. Pitching definitely is going to have to step up if Texas wants to be one of the last teams standing at the end of the season. But it's a marathon, not a race. And hopefully we see that development and they get better every game, every weekend, every series. Their next game Tuesday night against Incarnate Word. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we talk about the Texas basketball team once again ending the regular season with style and playing their best basketball as they get into the Big 12 tournament starting on Wednesday. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, Major League Baseball, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. All right, getting out of here talking about the Texas basketball team. And before I get into, their win on Saturday and moving forward, I just kind of want to talk about the season as a whole. And I would say Texas did not maximize their potential this season. All right, I want to be very clear about that. Texas did not maximize their potential this season. I thought Texas could have been better. They should have been better. They were not better. But they ended up having a very solid season. And when you look at it, where they were, right? I guess a couple months ago, where they started off 1-3 in conference, right? Those 3 losses were to Texas Tech, West Virginia, and UCF. Texas Tech is a solid team, but they should have not lost to West Virginia and UCF, especially at home, especially when you had a 17-point lead against UCF. And then the whole horns down thing happened, right? And this just looked like a full-on debacle, right? And then you look up 2 months later, right? And they have some signature wins, some really good quad one wins. They're a lock to make the NCAA tournament. And they ended up 500 in conference play. Definitely not the season we expected. And I still don't think that they maximized their potential or met the preseason expectations we had for them. But based on where they were 2 months ago, I have to say this Texas basketball team had a solid season, right? You can't hang your head over a 20-win season, period, in college basketball and a 500 conference record in the Big 12. And I think had they beaten West Virginia and UCF and were sitting on 22 wins right now and looked like a 5 or 6 seed in the tournament, or had they beaten or finished that game against U of H and you could say we beat the number 1 team in the country, or had we beaten UConn or Marquette and gotten a signature win in the out of conference, I think this season would look a lot different to Texas fans, but I think because we fell in all of those games and it seemed like every game we won was a game we were supposed to win, and every game we were supposed to lose, it seems like we lost. That's why a lot of Texas fans, maybe lost faith or lost excitement in the basketball program this year. But I think the good thing is, and what I've seen on social media is that the Texas basketball team right now is playing their best basketball of the season, and fans are excited going into the tournament that this team can make a run, right? So, that's all I ask for, right? I want to judge the program, fairly, and, judge Rodney Terry fairly. But, when the team is doing good things and, they're looking like they can make a run, all I want, fans to do is acknowledge it, right? And support the team and Put your biases aside and hope that this Texas basketball team can do something special. And it seems like, for the most part, everybody I've seen, regardless of how you feel about the program, the season, or Rodney Terry, everybody seems to be on board heading into the Big 12 tournament, which is a good sign. When we look at, before we get into the game on Saturday, some awards were handed out, well-deserved awards for our players. Dylan Dessou, first team All Big 12. He deserved it. One of the best scorers in the country, one of the best players in the country, also most improved player. Last year in February, he was averaging 8 points a game. Right now, he's averaging about 17, 18. So absolutely should have won that, especially in the Big 12. And then Max Aceman is a huge step up from him in terms of competition, going from Oral Roberts to the Big 12. And he was one of the 4 best guards in the Big 12. He got second team all conference. So really good for him. Now moving on to Saturday's game, 7 straight wins against Oklahoma, 6 straight wins against Porter Moses. And I am never one to, call out anybody's job or put anybody on the hot seat myself. But I will say, if you take over a job for the basketball program and you lose your first 6 games to your biggest rival, and it's not like Oklahoma's done anything of note outside of that. It'd be different if they were going to like Final Fours and Elite Eights, but they just couldn't beat Texas. You start off 0-6 against your biggest rival. Like, I just don't know how the administration can be excited about that, right? Like, not saying he's a bad coach, right? I think Oklahoma is in a good place in terms of basketball, or where they should be, I should say. So I'm not saying he should be fired, and I'm not saying he's a bad coach by any means. I'm not saying that they can find better, because the grass isn't always greener. But I'm saying, if your coach, as an administration, the coach you hired, starts off 0-6 against your biggest rival, that is absolutely cause for concern, no matter how much they like Porter Moses in the building. Tyrese Hunter explodes once again. This is a different basketball team when Hunter makes this a big 3 and plays decisive. And every shot he took on Saturday is available for him every game in this offense if he decides to take them. 30 points, which is a career high for Tyrese Hunter, and also 7 assists. Really good work on defense, forcing turnovers, getting to the basket. Just a masterclass from Tyrese Hunter in that game. If he continues to play like that, this is a different Texas basketball team if he can be a part of a big 3 next to Max Aceman and Dylan Dessou. Speaking of Dylan Dessou, first team All Big 12 Dylan Dessou, I thought he was done for the season as he laid on that Baylor floor, right? My heart was in my you-know-what, and I was at a loss for words, right? And he had 16 and 6 in 24 minutes against OU. So it was a senior night, and I'm glad he got his last moment at the Moody, and he's one of the best basketball players we've seen at the 40 acres, undoubtedly. The box score won't tell it because they gave up 80 points ultimately. A lot of free throws came in the second half, but they defended really well, and their defense led to their offense. This is why you can't trust the box score all the time. Texas scored 21 points off turnovers. They had really good defensive intensity in that game, even though Oklahoma ended up with 80 points at the end. 25 fast break points. This team can run, right? And they're really good when they get out in transition, especially when they are forcing turnovers. Tyrese Hunter is really explosive, forcing turnovers and getting to the basket. Kendall Weaver is really explosive in terms of forcing turnovers and getting to the basket. And you know what Dylan Mitchell can do in transition. So this basketball team is better when they run. They scored 94 points on Saturday, and I think that's going to be the key to moving forward, right? Especially because we see a lot of times this team can get bogged down in the half court, right? They don't have a lot of just true bucket getters. So you're going to have to get easy buckets, using your defense to get easy baskets, forcing turnovers, but also just get out in transition and run. And I think that'll be really good for Texas. We need easy buckets moving forward to make a run in both tournaments. And then they were able to score 94 points on offense with Max Aceman only making 5 shots, only scoring 11 points. So to me, that showed the offensive and defensive potential of this basketball team on Saturday. And like I said, it's a really good sign that they're playing their best basketball of the season at the right time of the year, going into the Big 12 conference tournament in the NCAA tournament. They kick off on Wednesday against Kansas State. They beat Kansas State earlier in the season. Now they have to beat Kansas State in what's, somewhat of a home game for Kansas State in Kansas City. But the way that this Texas basketball team is playing offensively and defensively, and with the confidence they're playing with, I think they should beat Kansas State on Wednesday, even in, with somewhat of a road game for them. No problem. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em. Peace.